Good morning. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. And we certainly thank President Jenkins for traveling this morning all the way up to Shreveport with a number of LSU officials. And before we get started with President Jenkins, I know that we have a number of dignitaries here. I know I'll miss somebody, but I do want to announce the elected officials are here. Senator Greg Tarver, Senator Sherry Buffington, Representative Richie Burford, Representative Roy Burrell, Representative Patrick Williams, Representative Frank Hoffman, City Councilman Jeff Everson, and then we have several people representing others. Bernadine Anderson, representing Mayor Cedric Glover, Michael Jackson, representing U.S. Senator Mary Landrieu, Chip Layton, representing U.S. Senator Vitter, Mary Ann, representing State Senator Peacock, and Dodie, representing State Representative Henry Burns. So with that, I'm going to, and more. Okay, the latest update. Oh, and Joe Shine, yes, Councilman Joe Shine is here. There you go. Thank you, Councilman. Just a couple ground rules. After President Jenkins addresses us, if you would, any questions you need to come up here. There's two mics on the side here because we're also streaming this to the third floor auditorium, the 8th floor auditorium, and it's streaming live over the internet. So it seems to be a large crowd here this morning. And with that, President Jenkins, thank you again for coming here, and it's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chancellor, and good morning, everybody in this auditorium and also in the auditoriums that this event is being streamed to. It's once again a privilege and an honor for me to be. Many of you know I'm not a stranger. I hope I'm not a stranger in Shreveport. When my both Chancellor and President's days, I was up here very regularly, and I'm a regular attendee at your commencements, as you know. And if I need to put this right up front, I think many of you may not know it, though I know Aaron knows it. I was president when I decided it no longer made sense to have a Chancellor in New Orleans responsible for Shreveport. So I asked the board, who approved it, and hence we had a Chancellor in Shreveport responsible for a very fine health science center here. Equally so, a few years later, I talked Jim Drexler, I think it was, into letting the Health Science Center in Shreveport take over Conway. I think I'm right, Les. That was, and then I don't think I did Huey P. Long, though the late John MacDonald always wanted Huey P. Long as part of your responsibility, and that has occurred today. So I think my point is that I know this institution well. This is not the first time I've been here. It's not the first time I've addressed an audience at the Health Science Center in Shreveport. I too want to introduce just a few folk who are here today because that's important for me. One of my board members is here, Ray Lassane. If you know Ray, serves on our Board of Supervisors, and as we'll discuss presently, we now have a transition advisory team. I'm going to keep emphasizing the middle word of that, advisory team. And two of those members representing the northern part of the state, though we really represent the whole state, but they both here, and I'm so grateful to them. Bill Carmages, who's become a wonderful friend, and Bill, thank you, and Les Johnson, a physician from Monroe, who I've known for a number of years, are on that transition team. I've also got with me, and you need to know that, 4 scribes who have traveled with me as we visited our various institutions. Jason Roddy from LSU, Herb Vincent, a name you'll know, who's our PR person on the campus, as is Ernie Ballard next to him, and Bob Rasmussen, not a stranger once again to the Health Science Center in Shreveport. He was a regular visitor when Alan Copping was the president and still visited with me frequently. They're going to take notes, and we're compiling the results of our conversations with our constituents, with the 10 institutions I will ultimately complete, and then get that ready for not only the board, but also for the transition team. This is what I'd like to do this morning with you. This is really your time and not my time. I will probably speak for 15 minutes at the most. I prefer not to speak longer than that. Let me speak for 15 minutes, lay out where we are and what the plans are, and then I'll take questions and I hope suggestions from you. So that's the that's the plan, and that's what I've done at the others. I wanted to do 10 of these town hall meetings, and this is number 9 today, and I'm doing LSUS this afternoon, and that'll be the 10. I visited the institutions, once again with the huge advantage that I wasn't a stranger on any of those campuses, because for the years I served as president, I was a regular visitor, and did what I'm doing with you now. But the significance of that is the feedback you give us today. Our transition advisory team will meet next week, will be charged next week, and I'm going to go over this again because it's so fundamental. Then the teams will be formed, and many of you in this room will participate in those teams as we guide ourselves through the coming years. So with that, let me share a few thoughts for you, and what I'm about to tell you now, I'm going to ask you to believe me that this is truly the case. The next 2 issues I'm going to address, I want you to know that I believe are absolutely inevitable. There are 2 very major, significant changes occurring in the United States in your and my worlds. You have them both. The change in healthcare delivery and how healthcare is going to be funded and how we manage our hospitals, and the experts in this room, I'm not an expert, though I'm becoming an expert pretty quickly. How we manage our hospitals is undergoing a fundamental change, because our current model, especially in a world, and in a world it's true, but also in our country where financially we can't afford so much of what we've had in the past. As a country, we have a $16 trillion deficit. This can't go on. Healthcare is going to have to change in delivery, in cost containment, how we go about delivering healthcare, how we manage our hospitals, and hence, and this is not the topic of conversation today, but hence, as you would have noticed yesterday, 3 public-private partnerships, MOUs for 3 MOAs, really, for 3 public-private partnerships were put in place, and over time, this is going to be the model that we'll have to adjust to, because we can't, and the senators and the representatives know it, we can't fund, this year we could not have funded a healthcare service division through the whole year. We would have run out of money, and so it's clearly something had to be done, and that is the first step in this process. There was no choice. You may raise some questions about that, but the inevitability there, when I came back, and many of you know, I came back in May this year, the inevitability within a few weeks was obvious to me, even just having returned, but legislative session was on, and it was apparent that we were not in a sustainable proposition and something that had to be done differently. Now I'm going to turn to higher education. And it so happens I actually didn't come from Baton Rouge. I've just flown in from Dallas because I attended the National SACS meeting, the association that accredits colleges and schools, and I attended the president's session. And 2 deans of business spoke in that session, and it was stunning to me that they touched on every point that is affecting us at LSU today. We're becoming, I'm going to give you some numbers, I'll take the Baton Rouge campus numbers, LSU's campus numbers, but it's going to set the theme, and this is going to impact our professional schools as well, and trust me, that's the case. But we're becoming tuition-driven institutions, our state institutions, and less state-supported. LSU, when I left, 70% of our operating budget was from state funds and 30% from tuition. Today, that number is 66% from tuition and 34% from state funds, and if we go through this next session, it's very likely that that number will continue to shrink. Indeed, of our total budget, when you include auxiliaries at LSU, 17% is now state funded, and I thought that that's an extraordinary development. I discovered yesterday at the SACS meeting that is happening across the country. In fact, 17% is a respectable number given where other institutions are. And the fact is, once again, government in its totality cannot afford to support higher education as it has in the past, and the government support is shrinking. An alternative for now has been increasing tuition, but that's not sustainable if you think about it. There is they were both business deans, so I'll make that point as they made them. It's what you can afford and what you're prepared to pay for. It's become an issue today, and there is clearly and quite obviously a point beyond which you can't go, because then you have diminishing returns. And that's beginning to occur around the country. I found it a stunning hour-and-a-half session with those two deans. They've written a book, and I've already started reading it, because it's exactly what we're dealing with. What are your alternatives? We know we're in a financial situation that we can't, it's not sustainable for the colleges as it used to be. I first met Senator Tarver and Senator Buffington and others. We were doing just fine at the time. That's not the case any longer. There are not the resources there. So you have to look at alternatives, and many don't really play out. Private funding, and their title, incidentally, is From Public to Private, was the title of their presentation, from public universities becoming more and more like private universities. Same thing, private funding, yes, research grants, yes, gift, yes, other sources of funding, but it's very difficult to keep this enterprise sustainable. So that's going to be my segue into what I'm going to talk to you about in a moment. But the same thing that I've just said, which is obviously for mainly the four-year universities, applies to the medical schools too, except, and the other professional schools, but with the same problem. You don't have enough students to raise enough tuition to make up that deficit. You just can't do it. And that's the case in Shreveport, it's the case in New Orleans, it's a case in dentistry, it's a case everywhere in the professional schools. So we have a conundrum, and our board had a conundrum represented by Ray Lassane and his 15 fellow board members, but this has been going on for a while. We're engaged and have an enterprise with a wonderful history. We've done so well over the years, but we cannot go on doing what we've done before, because it is not sustainable as we move ahead. We've got to look at ways of managing LSU, the constellation of LSU, which is my term that I use often. We've got to find ways of cost containment, of efficiency, of effectiveness, of sharing responsibilities, of sharing costs, of developing cooperative and cohesive relationships so that we can support one another. And it became more and more apparent, and it is very apparent to me, not that I wasn't a disciple anyway, but after yesterday's presentation on the national scene, we're in exactly the same boat. We have to do things differently. So the board's asked us to look at that, and on my arrival then, I firstly recognized that this is critical. I know the institutions well. There's not an institution, in fact, this is beside the point, but I've been in every state in Louisiana. I think I've spoken in 36 states during my time here. I know our institutions. I've been in every hospital more than once. I've not been in every clinic, but there are 500 clinics, so that's not easy to do. But I know the system, and as the board presented this proposition of a one LSU concept of us binding together and working together to get this accomplished, it became very clear to me that it's our only way of dealing with a future that otherwise, fiscally at least, looks very bleak at the present time. So they brought in a group called AGB, Association of Governing Boards. There was a study about a year, 18 months ago, but they've been two reports since, and I don't want to go through those. You all have perhaps seen them, but they produced a report which initially made several recommendations, and then the decision was to go to a single CEO, and let me use that title for now. That's the president and chancellor, but in academia we don't often use CEOs as a title. That may be changing too. But a single CEO, and then that we have to do things differently. They suggested an organization. I'm going to come to that infamous organizational chart in a minute. How we can do this, and made the recommendations, suggested possible ways that we can collaborate, possible consolidations of functions, and how we could do that. And they presented that report, which the board accepted, and that's all the board had to do, and then studied it. Let me speak about the organizational chart, and let me get that settled right away. Naively, I thought the words on that, which was, this is an example of what an organization may look like. And naively, I thought everyone would accept that, and it was naive, because everybody believes that's the organizational chart that's going to be put in place. In fact, and I've told Ray this, I was told that at the board meeting last week that organizational chart was going to be approved by the board. That's not going to happen. We're going to have to, remember we, not me, we, collectively, we are going to have to work through this, decide what's best for our institutions, and proceed from that point. We will develop an organizational system, a part of which, by board decree, in which I support, is the authority needs to be a flat arrangement, flat management at the lowest common appropriate level. So the sense that I'm getting, it's more than a sense, that I'm getting from the Health Science Center in Shreveport is that you're going to lose your autonomy and lose control. Nothing's further from the truth. In fact, we're going to do this together. We're going to decide how this should be done. And for someone, and that's why I introduced my history with this institution, would it make any sense to you that I'd be part of an endeavor to subjugate the Health Science Center in Shreveport to another entity within the Health Science Center? Would that make sense to you? And of course, nobody's answered or even nodded your head, but of course, so I'll have to tell you it doesn't make sense, does it? It doesn't make sense. That's a tough audience here. But you know what I'm saying. We're so proud of this institution. I'm so proud of how far you've come with my long history. It wasn't 20 years, probably 17-year history of coming up to the Health Science Center in Shreveport. We've got to sustain and do the best we can, but trust me, in the world of tomorrow, you can't do that independently. We need to be part of a team and a cost-saving team. You already do that. The salaries for the whole system are done right here, in fact. That's the kind of cost-saving that we have to look at together. So that was an important part of it. The board established some guidelines, several of which aren't germane for you. The transfer of courses, the transfer of credit, the ability to take courses at different institutions and for those to transfer in, common course numbering system. None of that is important for a professional school, but it is for the rest of the board. The two aspects, though, that are very germane for the Health Science Center in Shreveport. The first is the research component, and you becoming from small beginnings, getting more, and I see Sandra in the back, more and more active in the research arena, more and more productivity. We'd like to see that combined for all of LSU. That's not as simple as it sounds. You'd say, well, just count it. Unfortunately, there's another entity called the National Science Foundation, which doesn't allow you to just count it, and you probably know this. Sandra is now looking at different ways of reporting research productivity. So I'm not sure where that'll play out at the end of the day, but it is one of the reasons a fellow named Jim Fernberg, some of you may know, was Chancellor of LSUA at one time, but he's worked at the National Science Foundation for years, and that's why I've asked Jim to help us. So that's a big part of that endeavor, but let's harmonize, not exclude, but let's work together as we work towards a very important aspect for a comprehensive research-focused university system. Let's get our research endeavors more coordinated than they are, And I understand that. I understand. I myself was a researcher. Again, I was blessed to go through those periods. You don't tell two faculty members to go and work together and like one another. It doesn't work that way. You've got to develop common interests and develop those interests together. What I'm begging for is the opportunity to explore those combined or collaborative endeavors. So that's important. The other feature that is fundamental, and I recognize it's not going to be easy for our two campuses up in this part of the world, the northwest corner, is looking at cost-saving measures, how we can work together and share particular costs, how we can streamline. And those of you in business with your company spread around, how you can do that cohesively and collaboratively is very, very important. It is. I don't know what that number will be. Those of you who've studied this, and I think many of you have, that number's often, I've read 20 million. I've read a number even higher than that. Personally, and I'm being honest with you, and I hope that's what I'm known for, I think 2 or 4 million may be where we'll finish up. But the benefit of that is already going to be that we'll have groups working together within LSU and supporting one another, and that is beneficial. And I can tell you from my month into this, that's already happening. There are already groups beginning to interact with one another and explore how they can assist one another. You don't know how important that is as part of this process. The other part of the board's admonition, I don't want to leave any out, Ray, but tell me if I've left any out, was to form a transition advisory team so that we can gather the information. And I have to make this point, and again, I'll do my best to convince you, but that team is not an authoritative team. That team is there, and I did my best to represent the regions. I don't have Lake Charles in there, and I will have to attend to that. But we need to work as a team, and I'm thrilled to have Bill on the team. I'm thrilled to have Les on that team. But we, the Transition Advisory Team, now the acronym is TAT, the Transition Advisory Team is going to form the sub-teams that we can look at where we think we can consolidate, where we think we can assist one another. And I'm going to take some easy ones and give you easy examples, and you're going to tell me they're easy, and I know they're easy. I think in government relations, I want you to know that last legislative session when I returned, and you were all here, I think we have about as good a team in place. Am I right about that? I think we have about as good a team in place. And one of the reasons is they work together so well, and they support one another. And I'm very proud of our team. Of course, we don't ever lobby, we just provide information, and we all know that. But the team we have in place, and I don't want to meddle with that team at all, I just want to formalize how we're going to work together so that our team will support the Health Science Center when you need us. And that happened. Did you notice last session how well they worked together? That's important for us. And then another easy one is tech transfer. There are 4 tech transfer offices in Baton Rouge, and you have one, Health Science Center in New Orleans has one. Tech transfer is becoming an important part of our future. In fact, the Agricultural Center, if they hadn't been successful with some of the varieties that they've developed and the income from that, which is now well over $1 million a year, it's something we have to do. And we have 4 now that are actually in second phase clinical trials, so you have hope for the home run. But they all have their special expertise in our tech transfer offices, and if they could work together and they could develop select expertise so that they could harmonize and work together, that would be very, very helpful. The first thing I was asked, so you'd put them all in one office, and let me be right up front. With today's technology, there's absolutely no reason for them to leave their offices. They can stay just where they are. I don't know how many people we're talking to, but I know there are many more who are in place listening to us now. But I would like that. Those are the easy ones. Then we get into the more complicated ones. Financial management are important. On the academic side, it doesn't impact you. You have to follow your courses and develop your own courses. But on the academic side, which courses could transfer, and then we got into promotion and tenure. It was one of the first questions I dealt with my first session at LSUA. And we have to work at those too. Obviously, at the moment, EA and S, promotion and tenure would be difficult if you followed. It was the first or second question, if I remember, is obviously difficult when you have a major research university, tier 1 research university, but the others will come along, and you all know this is not, I'm going to tell you now, but I'm going to tell the LSUS group, you all know what my dream is for LSUS, which is to make it a comprehensive research-focused university, and Bill, you've heard this ad nauseum from me now, that'll serve the northwest corner of Louisiana. You deserve a major comprehensive research four-year university in this part of it, and it should be Shreveport's university, and that's all I'm going to say about that. And that's, of course, I know it's easy for me to pronounce here because you all know I'm not going to be with you for many more months, perhaps a few, but not for many more months. But that's part of this, so that we can work together, structure these things together, collaborate, and get underway. And that's what the team's going to do. We're going to identify these and get input. Again, I've dealt with a couple of faculty senators, not a surprise. I was a charter member of the LSU A&M's, not LSU A&M, Texas A&M's Senate, faculty senate. And I understand Senate anxieties, and they will be involved in this process. I'm going to call on your senators to be, your faculty senators, to be involved one way and another. So we're going to do that together, and that's going to be the team's responsibility. The ultimate authority clearly resides with the Board of Supervisors. So what am I saying to you in a nutshell? We're in a time of great change in both instances. I'm not sure we'll deal with healthcare today, but we're certainly going to deal with higher education and how we're going to structure our institutions within the LSU system. I've taken a little heat for having town hall meetings, which are question and answer sessions. In fact, who's with me? What did I say at the first ones? I need your ideas. How should we be doing it? That wasn't easy to start with. Nevertheless, this is what I'm telling you we're going to finish up. We're going to get all the input. We're going to do this together. I'm going to use my Benjamin Franklin quote again. Everybody's tired of it. But if we don't hang together, we're going to hang separately in the world of tomorrow. We really are. We've got to harmonize our endeavors, and that's very important. You're going to be very involved. You have to tell me, and I'm hopeful at least you'll tell me something today about how we can do this together, but it doesn't have to be today. The team, with Les and with Bill and with the others, the team will accept those, create the teams that will uncover and discover and promote those ideas. But anything you have to say to me today would be well received. There's only one thing you truthfully, and I'd be dishonest if I didn't say this, if there's one thing you said to me today is we want to stay just the way we are, I couldn't accept that because I know, and although I'm retired, I still read actively in higher education and healthcare, in the healthcare field. You can't stay the way you are. It's not sustainable. Trust me, it is not sustainable. In 5 years' time, we'd be in dire straits. We have to control our future. We together have to control our future. We together have to define our future. We have to aspire. We have to have a vision and aspire to that vision. And that vision can't be the way we are today because unless a miracle occurs, what's going to change is the financial situation, both within our state and nationally. And we're going to have to adjust. Now that's about as long as I'd like to talk. I'd now like to hear from you. The way I do this, interestingly, I know enough people in the audience that I pick on the first 3 or 4 who will then answer because they don't have a choice. And then I open it up for questions and we'll have a dialogue. And Jack Sharp, I'm going to start with you. What a surprise. What can we do? What can we do? You and I... You'd go to the mic, and Jack and I worked together for years on economic development.
Many years.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, let me thank you. I've worked with 3 system presidents over the last 18 years, and there is no one who has demonstrated his desire to keep the system vital throughout the state than you, Bill, and I really mean that sincerely, respect and regard you for that. We've been in these discussions for some time. The state has been pulling back. The amount of public money to sustain has been diminishing for a number of years. So this is not a new discussion in many, many ways. I think that this room is, and you've already talked to it, is incredibly concerned about the AGB report. Yes, it may be an example, but nonetheless, it has impact, and I think you've heard about that. I think you've today put perhaps at rest some of the feelings that existed coming into the room. But let me make one statement that has existed over the years, and I think it lies at the crux of what we hope the board will do as it tries to reshape and make the university more competitive going forward. In almost any aspect of life, whether it's family or business, academia, whatever, people invest in that they value. Conversely, they do not invest in that which they do not value, because there are always choices. And our feeling is that there is a likelihood that without a consolidated and constant reminder, the one university, one LSU approach to things will devalue our part of the state. We are incredibly dependent upon this institution and the sister institution across the city for helping us to keep our economy vital and to provide services into this community. If it's devalued in any manner, we have to object. So we're looking for expressions of do we characterize things in organizational charts, or do we define our value system for this part of the state as part of this exercise?
Well spoken, Jack, and the devaluing is exactly what the 2 business deans spoke about yesterday. You only invest in things that you value. Yeah, and those are well taken. The only conundrum that we have, and I'm not concerned about your statute, or which is obvious to you. I'm very comfortable that the title and the organization, that has to be determined, but it's obviously has to be functional. We can't lose functionality for the sake of a chart. That cannot happen. You know, this is a people world. We work together and we interact together as people. The little quirk, and I have to do more on this, is the chancellor title. And Bob and I and Larry and I have discussed it. Interestingly enough, presents a problem with NSF funding and how you count funding. I'm not prepared to sacrifice that just for a title, but we need to discuss it collectively. And I don't want to spend time on this, but the NSF use a chancellor vice president as 2 different arrangements. But we have to put an organizational system in place that works. We can't put an organizational system in place that unravels or unties our institutions instead of binding them together. That borders on insanity, I think. Maybe that's too strong a word, but it does. We need to, the goal here is to strengthen our outreach. And you know, I'm going to get back to LSUS, and I know many of you have heard this from me ad nauseum now. You've heard it from me. You're seriously underserved. You need, with a population of 400,000 in this corner of the state, you have to have a comprehensive research institution. I've used other examples for you in the past where that's happened. You know, Senator Buffington and I spoke about UT Dallas. Their enrollment's up. They now have 7,000 graduate students at that institution, founded at the same time as LSUS. It's extraordinary. All right, Sandra, I'm going to pick on you next, and maybe 1 or 2 more, and then you'd better start volunteering, because I'm ruthless about this.
Thank you for visiting us, President Jenkins. It's a great honor to have you here, and I know we've gone through this before with Mr. Selver here, and we talked about our independence before. I actually have kind of two parts to this, and our biggest concern, at least mine initially when seeing that organizational chart, although you said it wasn't the last one, we're concerned about that other layer between us and you, basically. We fought very hard to eliminate that layer. And Dr. McDonald would be probably rolling in his grave if he knew this were happening now. So we are very concerned about that. But also I'm concerned about, in all the aspects, the research. Are we going to have one research place to submit grants? Are we going to have one HR? Those are all concerns. But I read in the paper that Dr. Opelka is already under the title of Executive VP for Health Affairs. And I read another place that Dr. Oye was reporting to Dr. Opelka. So I'm wondering if this has already happened.
No, it hasn't. In fact, that's not Dr. Opelka's title. His title is Healthcare Delivery and Medical Education. Should have been Graduate Medical Education. Redesign is the title. None of those responsibilities have changed. I don't know where that came from. That was absolutely spurious. I read things in the paper that I've said that I actually know I didn't say. But if any of you can, the media here, if any of you can help me overcome that, I'd be very grateful. The only way you overcome it is not to make yourself available, which I've never done, as you know I've never done. None of that is settled. And of course, the three AGB guys, I think there are 15 vice presidents in that chart. I've just made the case that we can't afford what we're doing now. We can't afford 15 vice presidents. So when we're done, this is going to look very different, and I'm comfortable with that. And I understand your concerns, but what I've been dealing with these past few weeks is dealing with spurious reports that are simply not true. And that's not true. We've got a long way to go. We haven't heard from you yet. I've heard that we haven't included you yet. Of course we haven't included you yet. I'm now laying it out, and now we're going to hear from you. So that's very critical. Dr. Oye is answering to me. All right, and any volunteers yet? All right, still not. I knew you'd deliver. Thank you. I knew you wouldn't. Health Science Center Shreveport would never fail me. Here we go.
Good morning, Dr. Jenkins. We are very pleased to be able to ask questions. We have a lot of them. I want to start simply by making a comment that will address our autonomy. You know that we are not here opposed to change, especially change that will benefit our institution. And we certainly have noticed the budget cuts, these very deep budget cuts, coming to both our health care side and our higher education side. And as an aside, I want to say, when people were saying that you fund things that you value, I think it's kind of important for the state to remember that it's defunding things that maybe should be valued. Okay. After that, our responses to this large cut it seems like every 6 months, has been possible because we have autonomy here. And our community leaders and you fought very hard for us to have this autonomy. As a result of this, our funding has increased at the Health Sciences Center in Shreveport. We have developed our curricula for graduate medical allied health education. We have developed IDC redistribution plans, salary supplement plans based on research incentive, which are very important since we don't get state raises very often. And we've been able to do this mostly because we have our own administrative system. However, we have remained, and we do remain, a part of LSU. The name is here, not just the name, but we are part of the system. We have at least 30 formalized collaborative efforts within the system that include healthcare and research. Our core facilities interact with other core facilities through the state. We already have in place many of the goals that seem to be sought here. It appears that the biggest problem is the state would like to not fund public education in Louisiana, but would rather have it privatized. Is this what we're dealing with in terms of this reorganization?
Well, state policy is not my responsibility, but
Right.
funding these institutions is. And I think there's an inevitable trend nationally now to do that. I just want to address autonomy.
Okay.
Institutions have to be autonomous, but collectively, and you said, and you're right, you are cooperating. I think LSUS has a few programs with you, and I know even the
Absolutely.
community college does. But we need to do more of it, is my case, that we need to reach out much more. If there's no more vulnerable position to be in than you separated from everybody else. And that's my plea here as we continue, and you've done well, and I know that, and I know about the collaborations. You collaborate across hospitals. Remember, you are unique too. You have your medical school and your hospitals one of a kind. That's what's made you special and different, unlike the others, but you have your own hospital. But you're right, our funding situation is precarious. You've been very fortunate this year that you've managed to overcome it. Bob, how long is that sustainable for? Not much longer, I wouldn't think.
45 days.
The other part of the question does concern what you just said, and that is that we are a very different institution than many, and that has been due to our hospital's connection with our
Yeah.
medical center. That apparently is going to change as well. How do you envision our medical school still developing in the face of this change to the hospital?
I don't know why it would change. Is there any reason it would change? Our medical school now funding the hospitals is a
Exactly.
totally different issue.
That's the issue.
But our relationships, we've not conversed at all about that.
No, I think the issue, across is that whatever partner we have to be aligned with medical school, graduate school, and allied health. That's the real issue. There has to be alignment
Yeah.
basically there are our condition of education, research, and clinical care. So the biggest issue is that our partner has to be aligned because we are different from other hospitals, other community hospitals. That's what we're looking for, an alignment that actually enhances our mission.
And since
that
it's part
has to be the case.
Since it's part of our success, we really hope that won't change.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I would hope not. Yes.
So, welcome again, Dr. Jenkins. One of the things that Dr. Barish said he was going to do when he first came is involve the community more in health science affairs and support. And he said to me and said to many others that he sensed that there was a lot of untapped resources out there that could be brought to bear. And since he's been here, he's done a wonderful job of involving the community. I attended the first Evening for Heroes that was attended by many, many people and brought funds into the Health Science Center and the foundation. We are concerned that if there is a merger and we somehow become not LSU Health Shreveport but LSU, that the funds that have been donated will now somehow shift south. And so is there any assurance that they will remain in both the foundation and the Health Science Center?
Yeah, and you know, I've heard this repeatedly, and I'm very concerned about it. It can't happen now. There is policy in place which defines if an institution will close, which is not going to happen in either case. But if it's closed, how those funds would be distributed. Even at the third and fourth level, they never leave the community. However, I'm promising you this, it's one of the first things I was confronted with when I came back. I've got to get this fixed once and for all. That it's pretty clear now, but in the extraordinary eventuality of maybe closing the Health Science Center in Shreveport, which is never going to happen, that we have it absolutely defined. In fact, Shelby McKenzie, now my lead counsel, is working on that actively. I've got to get this fixed. It's not going to happen, and we need to get it attended to. The respective foundations, yours, right across, I can't think of an exception. Every one of their foundations was in Baton Rouge. The three are at the one foundation. But those funds have to remain in loco. That's obvious to me. We thought we'd done it, but we're going to have to just reinforce it. You don't have to worry about that. That that too would border on insanity if we ever came and meddled with the Health Science Centre Shreveport's private funding. That would be a dangerous ploy. Life-threatening ploy, I think, if you were to do that. Yeah, I don't, you've raised a concern I'm aware of, and in fact I've got Shelby, who some of you may know. I've got Shelby, you may know Shelby McKenzie. I've got Shelby working on that now. We just have to somehow, I'd prefer to do it and not the legislature do it. I'd prefer to do this in a way that you have absolute assurance. When I first saw it, I thought we had it, but obviously there must be some kink somewhere that and I've asked Shelby to straighten it out. So please don't worry about that. We'll, and if I don't deliver, hold me responsible, because I've promised you, all the foundations, it can't happen. I mean, remember, I was very involved in development myself. I led the first campaign. You can't let that happen to your donors and to your private funding. You cannot let that happen. It's not complicated. Philip, I wondered where you were. There you are.
I want to say again, thank you for coming. You have always come and been a part of our region. Thank you for what you've already said today about what you've done before as it relates to building a chancellorship here. It wouldn't have happened without you, and we're thankful to you for that. We're thankful for what appears to be your continued steadfast support of that concept. And hope that that's the way things are going to go. We also know, you know, that people change, people move, and so it's really, really important to us as words on a paper too. How we develop policy, what's on the policy, what's written, because when you move on to your next place, and there's a new person there, and when there's a new governor or there's a new legislature, things change. And so we're very cognizant of decisions made, words on a piece of paper, organization charts. All of those things are very, very important to us, especially since we're a long distance away from informal conversations that we might have with you or others. It just doesn't happen as much because of geography. So that's important. I hope you'll consider that as you're sitting there and the Board of Supervisors is sitting and you're thinking about words and how you're going to lay this out, that we need to preserve the local autonomy that has worked here historically, and that should be a major part of what we do. I want to move just real quickly to another thing that you talked about right off the bat, which is you made it very clear that we were in a time of significant change. And you're absolutely right. And there's no other sector that's changing faster, I don't believe, than healthcare. Healthcare has to change. Very good point. Healthcare is going to change. It has to. Money makes it change. So that's a big issue. So let me just put the two together for just a second, okay, so that there's an understanding. I think as you look at One LSU and as you look at reorganization of LSU, you know more than anybody, you have a lot of balls rolling all at once. You've got dishes spinning everywhere on this. So as you look at organization One LSU, I want you to really consider the fact that you're also in the midst of developing public-private partnerships. And think about private partnerships, think about how fast healthcare works, and think about all those things as we begin to develop One LSU. Because your private partners are now going to be a part of One LSU, no doubt. And here, it's even more important because you know we have the Shreveport model. It is a different model. Yep. It works, as Dr. Barish has just alluded to, and we have to continue to support that and make that happen. So I guess my only real thing I would like for you to consider, beyond what you've already talked about, which is assuring the chancellorship or direct report to the president that we continue to have our local autonomy, but also as you develop one LSU, that it not be thinking about how things were in past, but thinking in terms of future and what you're going to do with public-private partnerships. I will tell you, as a private health system, on a board of a private health system, it would be very difficult for any private health system to have to deal with 4 different folks: the president of LSU, the vice president of health affairs, the vice president of the LSU Health Science Center in Shreveport, and the vice president of the hospitals. So as you put together this plan of collaboration, please consider those things as you do that. And again, thank you for your support and what you'll say in support of LSU Health Science Center in Shreveport. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philip. When you say you, I assume that's not me, but us. I think that's the you, the collective you here, that we attend to that. I believe, and I'm going to let Ray respond, but I believe the ultimate goal has to be to codify this. I'm sure that's a legal term which shouldn't be used. Am I wrong or right about that? But anyhow, codify the arrangements and the plans as they move ahead. But you're going to be part of that, folk. You're not going to shirk this responsibility. I'm going to do in the future what I'm doing to you now. I'm going to call on you to be part of this. And please don't say no to me. That's all I'm asking. Ray, would you like to contribute? I've done this when board members have shown up. I get them engaged in the conversation ruthlessly and relentlessly.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. I want you to know that we all of the board supports everything Dr. Jenkins has said here today. I want you to know also the board recognizes the things that this Health Science Center has done. The med school up here has been a great model. And I know we're talking about change, and I hear resistance to change, but if this facility, if this institution had not changed, you would not be the model health science center and medical school that you are today. So you've embraced change. You've done it the right way. You've recognized technology that would be beneficial to you. You've grasped that. You've used it. You've implemented it. You've made changes where they were necessary to enhance this institution. And our goal is, with one LSU, is to sustain what we've got, but also to enhance every member of our LSU system. So I think we all have a common goal. We want to improve what we've got. We're not interested in change just for the sake of change. We're looking to make this a much greater institution than it is. And this institution right here is a very critical part.
Thank you very much, Ray. I didn't make the point earlier, but I was asked when I came back what my responsibilities are, and you've heard this from me before, but nothing has changed. I serve the citizens of the state of Louisiana through the Board of Supervisors. That's what I did before, and that's what I do now. Our responsibilities are citizens in the state. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much again. I'm like everyone else for the opportunity to hear what's going on with the LSU system. LSU Baton Rouge is the flagship institution for this state. And I'm concerned about the HBCUs. I know this is about LSU, but there's a ripple effect. What affects LSU trickles down to the other boards and the other decisions at HBCUs in this state. How will the decisions you make for this institution and for the LSU system affect the boards of the other HBCUs, Southern, Grambling, Xavier, and Dillard in the state of Louisiana?
That's a good question. I think you probably asked me because you probably know my relationship with Southern University and the presidents over the years, including Senator Tarver's brother. I've been very welcome at Southern. I know Southern well, and Ron Mason and I are becoming friends. It's not answering your question, but it's just pointing out I'm very sensitive about that question, as it turns out. What's interested me, and in fact in both arenas, let me do healthcare first, then I'll come back to the universities. we got underway with looking at our new models that our legislature and others are aware of, and looking at public-private partnerships. Then I discovered that the major public hospitals in the country, Bob, you heard that, the Cook counties, the Grady's, the Los Angeles, are watching us like hawks, because they know exactly the same thing is coming down their highway. And it's been very interesting how, we don't ever think we're in it stunned me at Sachs, how many people know what's going on at LSU, and certainly in the healthcare arena. So, having made that point, but even the realignments that we're exploring and our enhancements that we're exploring, everybody is watching us, because many feel, and far be it for me to say, but we're all under this similar pressure. I can't speak for the other systems, but we're all under similar pressure. I'm doing something I shouldn't do, but I'm going to. And you see, at my age, the board has said, you're so old and decrepit, and you can say anything you like. So I've become to do that. We're going to work so much closer together as we move ahead. The institutions are going to work together. We can't sustain all the programs we have now. We're going to have to focus on our programs. And you can't just, that's why I made my point a moment or two ago. If we're serving the citizens of the state, you can't erase whatever the field may be at every university. You can't do that. You've got to, some universities have to provide their specialty, and others are going to have to yield on some of their courses and some of the other programs that they have. I see us all in this together. The regents have been very interested in what we're doing. They have a special role to play if they're mergers. We're not talking about mergers yet. The positions have been merged, but that's not what we're talking about. Campus mergers or programmatic mergers, we're not there yet. And if that happens, of course, the legislature become involved with their mergers. That may happen. I'm not sure. See, this is frustrating everyone. I can't tell you what the end result of this is going to be. And the reason I can't tell you, because you haven't told me yet. We haven't done this together yet. I can't do this alone. If I went out and pronounced, you can imagine, Ray, I'd work for another week, and that'd be the end of that, I would think. We've got to do this together and consolidate together. But I believe the other institutions need to be part of it. Obviously, I don't know, although I visited, I used to recruit at Grambling, and I saw Norman Francis yesterday. It's unbelievable that he is still president, absolutely unbelievable. He and I had a chat together, but I know the other institutions, and I certainly know Southern well. And we're in this together. We may look like we're out on our own at the moment. I'm telling you, and that's not very genteel, but in time, there's not a doubt that all of us are going to be in this together. I don't see an inevitability unless something remarkable happens. Yes, sir.
Dr. Jenkins, I want to welcome you to my legislative district where the hospital is located, as well as the medical school. State Representative Roy Burrell.
Yeah.
I posed a question to you at joint budget.
Yeah.
First of all, let me make a statement about the autonomy of this system. I think we have a great system here. I'm talking from the standpoint of a parent of a student who's here, I think is in his 4th or 5th year residency in orthopedics. And if it were not for that autonomy, I don't think my son would even be in this school finishing up here. I've seen the student body in the medical center change, the diversity. Working with Ms. Robertson, who's worked very, very hard to diversify the system here. From that perspective, I think that it has done wonders, because as a parent, I've seen this, and as a legislator, I've seen this. The other side, on the funding end of it, I think part of the 800-pound gorilla, as they say, that's in the room is in my opinion, to some extent, from that perspective, is the Affordable Care Act, in which no one seemed to want to talk about. We get paid all these big bucks, I think $16,000 a year as legislators, to ask these kind of questions. But how do you see the effect of the Affordable Care Act on our institution in terms of its funding in the future? I think I posed that question. I asked whether or not an analysis has been done. You said it has not. Where are we with that?
Yeah, it's a very germane question. The Affordable Care Act in 2014, and we know it's coming. and you know I'm in the position that I have to deal with what I have to deal and what I know. That's a policy decision beyond where I am, but it will clearly, if this were to triumph now, I don't have the analysis yet, I'll be honest with you. We asked, remember, a group are working on that. I don't have that analysis yet, but that's something we need to do. But I have to, and I'm not, you don't know me well, but you know me, I don't duck issues. That's not an issue I can easily address at the present time. It's hard for me to know, but we are doing the analysis. I'm right, Bob. I think we've got the teamwork on that. And when I face you again in a committee room, I'll have that answer for you. Okay, let me take you first. Well, let me take Mr. Selber first.
Bill, I've observed since this institution was separated from New Orleans, a complete cultural change, a change from no to yes. I have a concern that unless we, as a result of the formation of this, form a local board, that there's a great difficulty with Louisiana, which is basically centered on the I-10 corridor. And I'm married to a New Orleans girl. I was educated in New Orleans. So I know that the thinking is it's a hard trip to come to Shreveport. It's not hard for Shreveport to go to New Orleans. unless there's some organization left up here to pursue the interest actively of this institution, I'm very fearful that it will be once again absorbed into the Louisiana pattern, which doesn't really answer the need up here. They've done a good job. They were threatened with not being accredited before we separated, both the whole institution, and they had many departments that were not accredited. Today, I think we are pretty well accredited in all departments. Many of the people here fought the battle. They know the condition of the university. We understand the problem that you have in Louisiana. This is a fairly unusual institution because they make money. And they have the opportunity to make money. And it's a different model. Louisiana hasn't functioned that way in higher education or in medical education in New Orleans because it's separated. So I hope that you, who have been through all this, and at least have seen the transition, which I think is remarkable. And it took years, because when you develop an attitude of no, until those people retire, they don't become yes people. It's easy to say no. And I think that now we have an institution that is made up of positive people. I would hate to see us go back to what we were, and it's very comfortable and it's easy to do, and higher education many times goes that way because I'm involved with the university. So I plead with you, at least don't denigrate the institution again to just be homogenized into something that really, I think, harms its ability to perform in this part of the state.
Thank you very much, Aaron. And you attended a pretty good institution. And we go back a long way together on this, and I cannot perceive of that ever happening. I really can't. It's clear, not only politically it's impossible, isn't it? Politically it's impossible. I don't perceive that ever happening again. There is one thing that I will tell you, though, You will have noticed in my conversation today, I have never spoken of the North and the South. Did you not? It's the only time I'm going to say those two words. See, I don't believe in the North and the South. I believe in Louisiana in its entirety. And every part of the state has to be strong and support one another. Now, I know there's a long history there that Bill Jenkins is not going to change, and I can't fall on a sword because I won't survive. But I believe in the whole state, and this corner of the state, and I don't know the history of that, is underserved in higher ed, and it's why I think a part of why this institution is so respected. It's one of your jewels up here is this very institution. I would hope, and I'm going to be relentless about this. I hope we can get LSUS in a similar position quickly, but I don't see that changing. I'm going to ask Ray, who will be the decision maker, and you're right. I'm the first to acknowledge, and these have been hard for me, those who know me well, because I know the search for the next president's underway. I'm not going to be with you for 5 or 6 years. We all know that. But Ray, can you ever conceive of a board reversing that decision today? I can't. Can you? I don't believe that can ever happen. It just can't occur. I'm facing legislative friends here who I couldn't. I know I'd hear about it. I don't see it. You said I shouldn't call on you, but I'm going to. Why shouldn't I? Can you ever see that happening? We've known each other for a long time. Can you ever see that happening?
Yes.
Well, not on. I've got a no and a yes. It won't happen on my watch, but that's silly to say because I want
to hear everybody else speak.
Okay, he's gonna go back to the mic actually. So let's get you the mic at the end. Is that okay?
I can take it now.
All right. Oh, I think I made a mistake. Right, Sharon?
First, I must say that I have a tremendous amount of respect for you and the work you've done at LSU. My brother Leon said a lot of things good about you, but he's from Harvard, and I don't believe in people from Harvard. I go a little further back than you with this institution, and probably a lot of people in here. I happen to be on the board of Confederate Hospital years and years ago, and I know what this institution is all about. I remember Merv Trail very well. I served in the legislature for 20 years. I fought with New Orleans and Baton Rouge all of that time. They were stealing our money. And I didn't say take, I said was stealing, okay? At the same time, the board was helping them do these type of things. So don't tell me about the board. I know you mean well. I really do believe that. I know all of this up here, public hearing, sounds good. But I'm going to be honest with you. I think the decision has been made. I think the decision has been made. Well, let me tell you, you know, I've been in this political game for 30 years. I understand the process. A couple of us went to the governor because y'all were getting ready to make the decision and was held up at that particular time. Let me say this to you. If this institution, y'all talk about one LSU, that sounds good. And I agree with you, Mr. Selvers. You mean one institution, Baton Rouge, not Shreveport, Louisiana. It was hard fighting to divide with Merv Trail, the separation of Shreveport from New Orleans. We had to first make a budgetary process. Dr. John McDonald, Dr. Muslow, all of us fought to make a difference. And I'm here to tell you, if this go through, if the chancellor of LSU in Shreveport have to report to what you call a executive vice president, we're going to look as stepchildren. And I know that to be a fact. I don't have that much longer in the legislature, just 8 more years. And I'm gonna make sure, right, too long, Joe. And I worked with LSU in Baton Rouge, and I'm going to be honest with you. I think you have done a good job. I have serious problems with what you all are doing right now. And the reason I have a problem is because I know what's going to happen down the line if it's anything of the past have happened. We met with the people who's concerned with the flagship. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, Senator Jenkins and I, we know exactly what's on the mind. And I'm here to tell you, Mr. President, Shreveport is not on their mind. They want us. They want to use us. They want our research money also, so they can become bigger and larger. And this is going to happen. And the board will make that decision. And they'll do it as week 1 is 1 Louisiana, is 1 LSU. I'm 66 years of age. I don't believe that then, and I don't believe that now. And I'm going to be fighting in the legislature to make that difference, to keep us separate. The reason why is that we're going to be ignored like we were ignored for many, many years in the legislature. That's the reason why we need to keep it like it, not exactly like it is. We know we got to do something different. We know we don't have the monies. We know that. We know we can't raise monies. We know that the Affordable Insurance Act is not going to be approved in Louisiana, as I heard, because that would help LSU Med School in Shreveport and all over. It will help, you know? So I really didn't want to say anything. I wanted to hear from other people, but I heard so much garbage, I had to say something.
Well, thank you, Senator. If we fail and if I fail, that'll be one of the greatest disappointments of my life. I don't see that happening. I just don't. You and I disagree. On the other hand, I'm not a senator, just an old country boy, and I don't believe the state can afford for this health science center in Shreveport not to thrive and do well. I just don't believe it. It's inconceivable to me that that might occur. And if I fail you, then I'll pay the price. I'll pay the price. But I understand the concerns. I dealt with those concerns. I'm not a stranger to the politics, as you know. Let's see how it all turns out. But you have connections I don't have. But I want to go back, and I want to make one point. It seems like I'm here to plead for you to help, for you to bring your strengths to bear. I've heard that we see what happens when we start that the rest of the state's a threat to you. It can't be that way. You've got to carve your own future. You've got to determine your own future. We have. So you don't believe that. That's sad. That really saddens me. Because I think that's absolutely fundamental to this process. That's why I'm here, and that's why we'll be back with our teams. Yes, you've stood for long enough.
Okay. First of all, thank you for coming here and listening to us. As a newer faculty member that just got tenure, my concern also having been through hospital mergers and seeing things consolidated because it saves so much money, I'm worried about things like IRB, grants and research, legal affairs, all of those things that have to be done before you can even apply for a grant. You know, if LSU down in Baton Rouge has got a list of things that they have to do, where are we going to fall in that fundamental listing? Is it going to be, oh, well, this Baton Rouge has all of these grants, LSU has these, we're going to get these done, and if LSU up in Shreveport doesn't have the time to get them in, oh well. I mean, that's a concern for me, and also for the IRB process. Part of that is being responsible to the community. And if we're all consolidated and IRB moves down to Baton Rouge, which happens in a lot of big systems, then you don't have any connection within our community unless we spend time driving down there. Having been through a hospital merger, seen everything consolidated, I saw all the heartache, all of the disasters. It doesn't necessarily save very much money. And it just creates an atmosphere that, you know, doesn't necessarily work. So I just want you to think about all of these other little things that are at work and at play that will make an issue as far as how we can succeed and grow.
You know, IRB's actually come up with other groups, including Pennington, which is right next door. We need to put our IRB teams together. That doesn't mean it's all centralized. I see no reason for that. But they need to be talking to each other and develop the commonality. I've served on IRB board, so I know exactly what you're saying.
So LSU Baton Rouge is going to come up to our standard with AHARP?
I can't tell you, but if they have to come to your standard to be better, tell me what's wrong with that. Tell me what's wrong with that.
That's fine if they're willing to step up.
Well, you see, this is my point again. I expect a lot from you in that regard. We're in this together. I'm going to say that quote again. I understand the IRB issue.
And the grants issue.
Yeah, sure I do. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Jenkins, I had a couple of questions. I've been trying to figure out how to put them together. In a prior board meeting, you said that there was a lot of support for this reorganization. And I sat and thought about that because outside of Baton Rouge, I know in Shreveport, I don't see support. I know in New Orleans, when I talk to my colleagues there, which by the way I have a grant with, I know I don't see support there. And I know I don't see it in Alexandria and in Eunice. And so I do appreciate that in Baton Rouge, there is some support. I know there are a few of my colleagues that don't like it that there are so many chancellors in Baton Rouge. It strikes me that you could fix that problem without interrupting our progress. The other thing I was thinking about was it seems like a great big Band-Aid for a problem. And I think about the long-term consequences for a short-term gain. For example, you've talked about rankings and the National Science Foundation. I've looked at their research expenditures charts. We might get an elevation in our ranking temporarily, but when you starve out the outside campuses and when faculty leave, the faculty with funding that can go elsewhere, there goes that ranking. So why? Why do we have to do this?
And the ranking is going down. So you'd like to leave things the way they are? I'm telling you,
Look
I'm honestly telling you, in 10 years' time,
every one of those institutions stands
you'll be
alone.
a shadow of your former selves, unless you undertake a combination and a strengthening of one another. We're in serious
Unfortunately,
national
I see
trouble.
that we'll be a shadow of a former self, but in the other direction.
Well, that's up to you. If you want to stay the way you are today, without any change.
No, I'm saying that we can get better. But I don't think we can get better with this plan. Our institution is on an upward climb. Let us climb.
Right. At the cost of... I don't think the future is bright as you see it today. I really do not sincerely believe that. We're moving into very troubled waters where I think isolationism is risky. I really do believe it'll be risky. But we can agree to disagree.
Dr. Jenkins, thank you very much for coming.
You're welcome.
I'm an instructor over at the Allied Health School, and we just did interviews yesterday. The one entity of LSU, when people already have acceptance letters to other entities within LSU, but they're still interviewing for Shreveport, Louisiana, that's got to speak volumes. We are our own entity, and if we let go, we're not saying we don't want to change, but if we let go of too much, we become the rest of the entity. When people are looking to come to Shreveport, then that sets us as the standard. So let us own that. Let us set the example. If the IRB here is much superior to Baton Rouge, then let us own the IRB. Give us the IRB and let us set the standards until others can meet our benchmark. You asked how to move forward? Let us be in control of that. If we're superior to others, and if we have people from other parts of the states coming to interview us here because we are by purview of our public, by purview of the people that we present our product to, i.e. our graduates, then let us own that. Let us set the standards so that we can move forward and others can meet our benchmark.
You know, the professional schools, I don't see any impediment with professional schools at all. Do you see that as a problem? I don't know why the professional school application should change at all or be different. I don't see that. Yeah, let me tidy that up. You can talk from there. I can hear you.
I think what I'm saying is it's great to be one LSU, but when we have candidates that have applied and been accepted to another LSU program exactly like ours, but they're coming to interview here, that tells us that Shreveport, Louisiana is the example by which others should be measured. And so that is an example that I'd say we can use across the board. We just heard that we feel that the IRB process here in Shreveport is superior to others. Then let us own the IRB process rather than shipping everything to Baton Rouge to be done there. Ship it to Louisiana. Ship it to Shreveport.
But that, I think, is what we're saying. Where it's done better is where you should have control. Yeah, it should be. I know that's the whole object of the exercise. I don't see no reservation about that.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah.
But I want to bring in kind of a different point. I'm not a LSU faculty member. I'm not on the board. Although I'm not as old as Greg Tarver.
Yeah. I am, as it turns out.
Okay, well,
I'm older than he is.
Right, well, I'm not as old, but I was born here at Old Confederate, when it used to be at a different place. This institution is a part of the backbone of Shreveport. I'm a public servant here in Shreveport. We cannot afford to have this institution devalued at all. This is one of our backbones. This is one of the things that makes Shreveport what it is. The LSU hospital and the LSU school. This is one of the economic engines that drive Shreveport and Northwest, and I'll even say North Louisiana. We have too many people who are working here. We have too many people that depend on this as their livelihood. We have too many people who come here to have their lives saved. To me, this is one of the best hospitals, not only in the state, but anywhere you can find. You can go to Arkansas or Oklahoma or Texas and they'll be talking about LSU because we have people who come there. I just happen to be vice chairman of the Shreveport City Council, and I think we gave this institution about $500,000 or more that will make the area on the outside more attractive, because this is important. So I don't really have a question. Greg is probably right. I've been in these kind of meetings, and sometimes you have these kind of meetings for window dressing, if I'm making any sense to you all. Decisions sometimes have been already made. I understand what you're saying, and you've done an excellent job over the years that you've been associated with LSU. But please, and I guess I'm not too proud to beg, but please, do not devalue LSU system here in Shreveport, because I just have that feeling that if we become just one big ball of wax, we're going to lose out. And it's too many people that's dependent on the growth of this institution. And like the doctor said, not a doctor, whoever, we have a great institution here. I feel like the institution here is greater than the one in Baton Rouge. although that's the flagship. So please, leave here, go back, let the people know that we are begging to continue the growth that we are growing and not to lose what we have by being immersed in the big picture. Thank you, Doctor.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I just hope that I've not given the perception I want you to be a status quo. I want you to be bigger and better than you are. That's my goal. My goal is not status quo. My goal is just the opposite. You have a very important role. I know the role you have. I don't have it any longer. I used to have the economic impact of this institution. I had that years ago. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, President Jenkins, can I say something? I've been
surely
kind of waiting my turn. And
I didn't see you back there. Sorry, I was on the left-hand side of the house. Let me come back to the right.
Thanks for coming up to see us. We all appreciate it. And I'd just like to say that I've been on the faculty for 30 years. And in that period of time, I've seen a lot of changes. And you've certainly helped us with some of those. And the past 10 years or so, when we have had our chancellor, has been kind of a Shreveport spring. I mean, the campus has developed like I didn't see it develop prior to that. We had new buildings, new programs. It was a much better place. And I guess what I sense and what I feel and what my fear is that we're kind of going back to the hug of the bear. I mean, that's really not what we need in this part of the state, in my opinion. I do think we have a special mission. We have some unique features of our medical center and the people we serve. And I think these need to be recognized. And I'm not sure that a one-size-fits-all mentality is the best thing for LSU Health in Shreveport. Our chancellors have been wonderful. They've done some amazing things. And I would hate to see that part change. We're used to change in Shreveport. That was our change. This whole faculty drove that change along with our representatives and the people in this community. I mean, we fought for that. And to go backwards at this point, and that's what it seems to me, is a mistake. And we're not saying keep it the same. Obviously, things have to change. But wouldn't it be easier to change if we had some autonomy, some direct input to the president, so that we could be more mobile? I mean, the most successful institutions in this town are locally owned in healthcare. And that's one of the reasons they can do so well.
You're right. Heraclitus 500 BC said nothing endures but change. If you think the world's going to stay the same, you're wrong.
Right.
You're really wrong. And we have to adapt. I was hoping we could get you stronger and firmer and absolutely in a statewide leadership position was my goal for the Health Science Center here. But we have made progress, but you can't. If you're not making progress, you're falling behind. You know that.
Well, I would say we have made progress. That's just it. We're afraid we're going to go backwards.
Well, that would be our responsibility. That can't happen. But you must continue to make progress. You can't stop. You've got to continue to grow and move ahead. And this institution is so important for the city that you have to do that.
Right. Well, we want to be part of the dialogue. We want to be part of that change. We want to help everybody think through this. I think we don't want it imposed upon us in such a rapid and dramatic fashion. We feel like we have no say.
Yeah, that's my commitment to you. You'll have these teams will be active, and you'll be represented on those teams without a doubt. This is the start. This isn't the end of this process. We're not in. This is the epilogue, the prologue. This is not the epilogue. This is the prologue of what we're dealing with here, not the epilogue. Yeah, this is just the beginning. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Jenkins. Okay, it's my turn.
Okay. I don't think so. I think you came up after I came up.
Okay. Let me.
You're not next.
Go ahead.
You're after me.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Jenkins, let me just say, you just made a statement that this institution is so important to this community, to the city, and to the state. But at the same time, there's a lot of dynamics here that you're changing that's not going to be the best for this city, for this state as a whole. So how do you say that it's going to be best, but at the same time, those things that you're doing is not going to be best for the administration. It's not going to be best for the employees. And how would this new direction affect the employees' benefit? Tell me that.
Well, let me say, I haven't made any changes yet. We haven't made any changes.
No, but you are contemplating changes, and that's the reason you're here, because of changes.
Yeah, but we collectively must do that. If we do this just independently, there are decisions in leadership, L1 and L2 decisions. This is not an L1 or L2. This has to be a community decision, a collective decision.
When will it start being a community decision and you give the community an opportunity to have input? When would you do that other than
the
today?
The transition team meets next week. We'll start forming the teams looking at these aspects, and you'll have representation on every one of those teams.
Again, how will these new changes affect the employees' benefit? That's what I'm asking you.
You know, I personally, just thinking it through, I can't see an impact yet. I don't know what will change.
It won't change at all.
In terms of employees, I don't know. That'd be a local decision. That's not going to be a reorganization decision. Your staff and your employees, I don't see how. Bob, can you help me?
Their benefits?
Yeah, I don't see any impact in that.
Dr. Barris, can you tell us how they will affect their benefits?
I was just sitting here minding my own business.
Well, I received so many phone calls, and I want to make sure that we get some type of an answer today.
So, actually, I don't know a lot of the answers to your questions. We've talked privately, and I know your concerns.
Absolutely.
And I've talked to other representatives. I don't know the answers to that, and I certainly know the concerns. So how all this is going to affect our employees, I think, is something that is going to play out here very shortly, and we will know the answer. But I don't have the answer to that.
But not in terms of reorganization necessarily now. Hospital redesign, that's a different issue.
I think that's what the representative's talking about.
Oh, no, that's
what was that? I didn't hear you. What was that?
No, that's hospital redesign. That's a different issue. We're talking about the development of a cohesive system, a cohesive institution. I don't think there'll be an effect there, but now on the hospital side and the healthcare side, there could be differences there.
Well, one last question for you. Can you tell me a little bit about the privatization? I know I probably missed some of it that you all made mention earlier, but can you tell me, is there a percentage that this hospital will be privatized out, those services? And when will that happen? And will there be an opportunity for the community to have some type of input in that?
We're talking about Shreveport now. I don't think you're there yet.
No, we're not there yet on the discussions of the public-private partnerships. They evidently announced 3 of them yesterday down south, but I would say that the south is ahead of us on those in that regard.
So do you have a time frame that we can look for to hear that information here in the city of Shreveport?
Oh, absolutely. As soon as we know more, we will let you know.
As soon as you know more means what? What does that mean?
It's going to affect me as well. So,
okay. As soon as you know more means what? Does that mean a year or 2 years or 3?
Okay. No. This is going to be
I didn't think so.
No, that's right. So this is going to be a fairly rapid process. And
say the next 30 days?
I don't think 30 days, but I would say probably several months.
Several months? So in several months, we'll have an opportunity to hear the directions of this hospital related to privatization. Is that correct?
I think all the legislators here will be involved and will understand what will happen in any potential way.
Well, I just want to make sure that the community and the employees are involved to the point of where they'll know as well. And thank you so much, Dr. Jenkins and Dr. Barrett.
Yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't answer that one, but
I'm going to help President Jenkins. Linda Bernanke, I know that you were next.
Okay. Hello, Dr. Jenkins. I am a small business owner, and you asked earlier about any ideas. And as I've been sitting here listening to all of these community leaders that love this institution and that have had the history with it as well, I would like to suggest what Mr. Selber recommended was to have a local board to look at the challenges that we face, obviously, with the financial situation, with the local board, And this institution, as the best practice, which is really what we're looking at, if you look at the entire state, LSU Health Science Center in Shreveport is the best practice hospital. We have the chancellor that has done a phenomenal job. So with the success that's been going on for the last few years, the best practices have the board in this community get together and present what they think that will save this institution and save the incredible faculty that they have built over the years, and then bring that to the board.
Yeah, a board like that would have to be an advisory board. The constitutionally,
That's
clearly,
right.
the board of supervisors is the responsible
An advisory board, local advisory board, to bring their recommendations to the Board of Regents. And that's something,
yeah.
right, supervisors. And that's basically what Mr. Selber, and we have Bill Comagee already on your advisory board. So there's so many great things that our institution can bring to the table. And I think that would kind of be a one voice and bring it to...
It's a new dimension, so
Okay.
we can think about that, yeah.
Thank
I've been thinking about local boards, in fact. But let me run that by and see. It makes sense. It makes absolute sense. Thank you.
So we have about, I think, 10 more minutes for President Jenkins, and I know...
Yeah, I've got...
I know that he has other... So why don't we take the last questioners, I think, President Jenkins, will
All right, thank you for being here. The question I'd like to follow up we just discussed is this idea that you've been mentioning that Shreveport has been growing. We have been moving. We clearly know that changes are coming, but I think everyone here is feeling like we're a boat, we're going forward, and you've just thrown an anchor down on us. And rather than taking the things that we have proposed and changed and made better, you're going to try to put the Baton Rouge model on the Shreveport model. And I don't know if that's going to always be good in every scenario. I'm speaking as a scientist. We obviously move forward. We advance our knowledge and want change and have to embrace new ideas, and we accept that. But I feel like, at least with what has been put out there in our hands of having a single grant, single everything else in Baton Rouge, whether that's true or not, but at least the impression, that will, rather than be the step forward you were looking for, that's hoping to come with Shreveport, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, but in the end actually acting as steps backwards. And I can tell you we are internationally recognized here, at least in our fields, and this speaks beyond me, but many other colleagues. And if you in any way devalue our chance of staying here, the people that are good are going to leave. And it's not going to be a step forward, but a step backwards.
Yeah, and the point you said we're putting an anchor on. I clearly failed today because it's just the opposite of that I'm trying to accomplish, is to strengthen all of us, but and to bring your strengths to bear where they can. And I've not made that case, obviously.
I mean, I don't think anyone here, no offense intended, but really believes that any of these changes, as of yet, is beneficial to us. I'm not saying they won't be, and maybe that's part of not getting all the information, but from what you can infer from the print, from talking here, and everything else we've heard, I'm not sure I've heard anything that makes me, as an internationally recognized scientist, and the rest of us, speaking from the research side, anything that's going to make this a better research institute, other than Baton Rouge saying they can count our dollars as one LSU, and that sounds great. But if our dollars stay in Baton Rouge, or any of these things are inferred, everyone good here will leave. And rather than combining dollars with Baton Rouge, there'll be less dollars for Baton Rouge. I mean, I guarantee you with pretty strong certainty that's what will happen if you're not careful. I mean, I know the devil's always in the details, and there's lots of great ideas. I can envision some myself, how this could all be beneficial. But as of yet, the devil in the details are favored on the devil's side right now.
And that's what I'm waiting for. That's where we've got to make our way to that point. This has to be a collective endeavor. Whatever I've said is where we are today, but this is not the end point by a long shot. And sadly, because of our financial predicament, we're losing scientists very quickly, and you know that too. It's a very real problem.
Let me say something, please.
Yeah.
I want to explain the.
Here we are. Sure.
I want to explain the transition advisory team. I know there's an extremely large amount of concern, and I share that concern. I'm from up here, and I want to see this institution thrive. The transition team will utilize these meetings and the questions, the issues y'all brought up to determine where their focus should be. Obviously, the concern is here is probably going to be different than other places, but they're going to look at all of the concerns from each town hall meeting. They're going to take those concerns, those issues. They're going to select subcommittees that will work with them and examine each issue that y'all have brought up here today that comes up in other town hall meetings. Those subcommittees will be made up of people who have expertise in the field that's being questioned. So they will be experts in that. They will analyze the issues and come up with recommendations to the transition team. The transition team will take each issue and those recommendations, kind of look at them all together as one, and then come back to the Board of Supervisors with multiple recommendations. There is no predetermined structure right now that we're looking at. The transition team is not going to be given instructions that this is where we want to go, make all these issues and all the recommendations fit this structure. That's not the way it's going to be. They're looking at what you do best here, and what you do best here, they may want to take that and apply it to one of the other medical schools or hospitals. So they're going to be looking at everything that each institution is doing well, try to figure out how to make the other institutions do it as well, with the idea of enhancing each campus, each institution that we have, and all of those, if each and every one of them are enhanced, then LSU itself, the whole LSU system will be enhanced. So that's where we're going with this. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, we'll take a couple more.
You say that there's a transition team. That would infer that the decision has already been made.
No, it's transition.
Now,
let me just correct
now,
you. And
wait. Let me ask
I
a
said
question.
to you, transition advisory team. Remember advisory. Did I say that when we started? Transition advisory team without authority.
Who makes the decision as to whether to go ahead with this?
Board
Is
of
it
Supervisors.
Okay, so it's not you that would make this decision.
The board's decision.
Okay. I don't know whether you hear concern from us or just skepticism as to whether whatever change occurs, if we're resubjugated the way it's been in the past, whether that would be beneficial to this campus. Change is inevitable. Funds are being cut, but I must point out that it seems somewhat disingenuous to see the state cut budgets yet still invest upwards of $1 billion to rebuild the New Orleans campus while cutting everybody else's budget, while decreasing higher education as well as health care. Seems very disingenuous. You've got no control over that. I understand that.
Well, other than Katrina, of course.
But unfortunately, you're the focal point today, as opposed to lining up the Board of Supervisors who really makes the decisions and allowing us to ask them questions. No one here is against change, unless there's the perception that it's going to be detrimental. The fact that, at least in the past, the perception on this campus was that the money went from Baton Rouge to New Orleans and whatever was left over went up to Shreveport. The fact that we have been underfunded, the medical school, for many years, and none of that has changed, again, fuels more skepticism that this will benefit us. And so those are some of the things that everybody on this campus is worried about and will become worse. Not to mention the concern that all of our youngsters, junior faculty, trainees, medical students have about how all of this will affect their training. That other than Dr. Barish, no one else has addressed. The Board of Supervisors certainly has not, or have not. We hear the stories how beds are being cut in New Orleans. That will have direct impact on the adequacy of training, as well as the training programs themselves and whether they stay certified. Again, we've heard nothing from the Board of Supervisors. Now, we all recognize this is being driven by politics. We all recognize that. No one here is naive enough to believe otherwise. Again, the Board of Supervisors have not said a thing to allay any fears, to allay any concerns, to allay any skepticism. And what I tell my students, my residents, my fellows, is that until faculty leave, it won't affect their training. Yet faculty will start leaving at some point in the near future because there's been inadequate conversation from the Board of Supervisors to us.
Let me take on some of your questions. Let me just touch the hospital replacement in New Orleans. That's a Katrina phenomenon, as you know, and a replacement hospital post-Katrina. And I had a lot to do with Katrina and what we went through in Katrina.
Well, yes, but there's still budgetary issues. And when we see higher ed and healthcare cut, it does seem somewhat disingenuous to then invest that amount of money for a local area when the rest of the state is suffering.
Yeah, but one-time money, let's be honest about that too. That's not recurring. I think you have a perception that Health Science Center in New Orleans is well-funded. They're in a serious predicament. Let me go to GME, and you said no one's paid attention to that. I actually had a meeting on the 4th floor that I called to point out the danger of what was transpiring as we dealt with our serious hospital situation to GME. And I know the matches are coming up now. I'm worried stiff about those matches. You need to know, because of what's happening. We're very, very well aware of the problem with matches at this time. It's the next couple of months. I think we have to deal with that.
We being you, but what about those who make those decisions?
Well,
and at least what the populace of Louisiana has seen, that if the political structure doesn't like what people are saying and doing, they get replaced.
Remember, I came back. We could have not funded the hospitals through this year. You know that. We could not have done that.
And then furthermore, you've already said several times, you're short term. What will happen to your assurances once you leave and someone new comes in?
Well, I obviously...
Again, you're not the one that makes the decision.
No.
It's really the Board of Supervisors.
Yeah, but I had to put that on the table, you know that. I hope I'm still remembered for integrity. I can't pretend that I'm going to be here as this comes to culmination. I know that. But that's an issue. These are issues that we're addressing. The training of our future physicians for the state, I just want to come back, are a matter of great concern to me personally. I've been involved with that from...
Sure, but what about to the Board of Supervisors? They're the ones who make...
Well, I know. I've reported to the board about GME. In fact, both Frank, Larry, and Bob, you've spoken about GME.
That's right. And we're going to take 3 other questions. But the graduate medical education issue that Seth is talking about is very important, and I don't think we're going to be able to finish it in 30 seconds.
And I tried not to ask any questions.
No, it's good. You did great. Thanks, Seth. We have about just 3 other people, and then we're going to get you...
Yeah, I've got LSUS this afternoon. Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Jenkins, I'm not an elected official, nor a politician. I'm serving somewhat as a liaison for a small group of poor people in the community. And I came today with the idea that I might hear something about the changes, the proposed changes for the hospital. Many of the people with whom I've spoken have some serious concerns about possible changes as it relates to health care for poor people, people who do not have the means to access the private health care institutions, but who are treated here at this facility. And there's a great deal of concern about possible changes that will come about on the medical side as it relates to the reorganization. And I'm wondering if you could maybe speak to that in any way.
Yeah, I can't. The reorganization is more the academic side. The healthcare side, and the Senator's right behind you, is a very, very complicated issue. But the one thing you have to know is we couldn't afford to carry on the way we were. We would have run out of money 8 months into it, I think, Senator. 8 or 9 months, we would have run out of money to sustain the program that was in place, the Healthcare Service Division's budget. We could not continue responsibly to do that. So that's, and as you know, there were 3 memorandums approved yesterday, and that's got to go through the whole process, but not approved. They were in fact signed. We're in a time of profound change. I wish I'd look you in the eye, but there's nothing, there's nothing that's more important than us providing that heritage that we have and looking after our indigent and poor and uninsured patients. The budget we had in place could not have done that. We would have had hospital closures, many hospital closures by now. Am I right, Senator? It was inevitable. This is trying to salvage and improve what we had. So I can't answer you directly other than to say I share your concern as much as you have. We can't fail in that regard. And we've embarked on another new journey, these public-private partnerships. We've had a charity hospital system in the state. I'm concerned about those patients as you are. The only thing I can tell you factually, we did not have the budget to see through this fiscal year without making these changes, and then we would have had our indigent and our poor people in a serious predicament.
So can I assume from that, Dr. Jenkins, that you're saying there will be some changes, you just don't know exactly what they are?
No, because they're negotiating up here, that you're in the middle of negotiations now. I know a little more about the 3 at Homer, Lafayette, and New Orleans.
Can you suggest to me the best way to track how these changes will evolve and how to stay abreast as to what they will be?
Dr. Barish, Dr. Mighty would be the 2. Bob?
So there's going to be a website on the foundation, the LSU Health Sciences Foundation, which will put all the documents and everything that we can put up on that website. I believe that's going to be up here in a couple of days. Is it up, Sally? Okay, so we can get you that information, where you can track it, and I guess it's already up. So I'll get you that after this meeting.
Thank you.
And we have to do this. Can I take the Senator, and then you'll have the final word? Is that okay, Senator?
Dr. Jenkins, I've known you a very long time. I worked with you first as staff before I was elected, and I have the utmost respect for you. And perhaps if you were going to be the gentleman that I was going to be negotiating with in the next 3 years, I would be a bit more comforted. With that said, I'm aware that you will not be here for much longer. But in the midst of this, I do not want it to be lost on the public or the Board of Supervisors. This university cannot fulfill its statutory mission. It cannot without this faculty, nor without these students. There is no way. I have 2 grave concerns here. First, making sure that graduate medical education survives this budget cycle, making sure that it maintains its accreditation, And the only way that I know to do both that and to maintain access for patients, not just within this region, and I want to be very direct about that. Patients that come to this hospital come from throughout this state and beyond.
Come from other states.
Absolutely, yes, sir, and that's never lost on me. The only way that that takes place is the faculty that's here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never lost on me, quite frankly. I know so many of these faces because for 23 years I've worked very directly with them. I know them by name. I know their families. And to be quite blunt, I work for these folks. I work for them. And that is never lost on me. I work for the patients that they care for. That is never lost on me. And I guess I feel a huge weight of responsibility as we go into this budget, and I hear a lot of discussion about one LSU. And I certainly am trying to keep an open mind. However, I know what it is like in the last 36 hours. Senator Tarver and I are both on that committee, and it's bloody. It's absolutely bloody. And I know what this year will be like in that budget process. And when it comes down to defending this institution and the people that I work for and the patients that they care for, I have a responsibility. With that said, I hope that the board is going to take into account that none of this can take place without this faculty. And I am gravely concerned that this faculty is being courted out of our state. I know for a fact they are being courted out of our state. And I'm gravely concerned when I speak to some of the top senior students here. And they are in the midst of doing those rotations, and they're looking for where they're going to do their residencies. They're having to look at me and say, you know, I love Shreveport. I want to stay, but I'm afraid to stay. That does damage the value of our institution. We are only as good as the faculty we have and the residents that we match. That's who we are. It's that in our research. That's who we are in this community. So I am pleading with you. I'm going to do everything I can in the budget, and I know my colleague Senator Tarver will. Nobody's better at that than thieving when we need to. But I am pleading with you to take into account what I'm saying to you. Because I say this to the business community. If you want to drive up cost of health care in this state, just create a workforce shortage. And that's what you are at risk of doing. Thank you.
Yeah, that's...
Well, the Senator's point's very well taken, and I can't pretend. I promised you honesty. I too was both a campus head and a system head, and LSU is vulnerable at the moment. I used to be a predator too. When other institutions are in trouble, I'd go after their best, and that's happening to us across the LSU system now. We're being raided. We've lost some of our top people, but it's the nature, sadly, of you think higher education institutions are honorable institutions. We're predators. That's what we are. And when when an institution's at risk or there's a difficulty, you come after their best faculty, and I'm dealing with that now. I'm more so, and both Senator Tarver and Senator Buffington know that very early on I brought up the GME issue right from the start. I've been worried about that, and the early matches, I'll be honest with you, are not good, but they're the super specialties. As we go into it, I am very worried about it. You have the closing words.
Dr. Jenkins, thank you. I have a couple of short comments and a suggestion. And the first comment is for both you, Dr. Jenkins, and Mr. Mussane, as is a suggestion. You've heard a lot of concerns here today, some of which stem from things that we've heard in the media that you say are misinformation, and some of which is from our experience, and some of which is just fear. A lot of these fears and concerns could be allayed by having more information. We have heard nothing until today, nothing specific until today about why these changes were to take place and what kinds of changes we might be thinking about. These things should be conveyed to us by the people who are proposing to make the changes, not the media. So I would suggest that in the future we have more information and maybe some input into the process and be able to come back to our community and tell people what's happening, what's being proposed. Do you have something to add? So I would suggest then that we be included more, we, by the whole community, be more included in the process and more information given to us directly.
And I accept that, and we will do that, and that's why the team is there to do that. To do this effectively, and I'm not a whiner, you all know that, but I'm now at the predicament, do we add to Herb Vincent's staff, or do we hire a faculty member? Just now I'm acting as a chancellor, remember I carry both titles. We're losing faculty. We're down between 10 and 15% of our faculty have left. But we have an increase in enrollment. This is going to be, I'm getting around to accreditation. I know it's the institution in Baton Rouge, but we then have more students per faculty member, which counts very much against unit accreditation. I'm deeply concerned for every one of our institutions that this is happening. But we'll do our best to get out. But you're going to be included in this process. You have my word on that. That's something I can manage. But the rest is difficult, and we all know that. I've tried to at least point out the challenges we face, and I haven't sugarcoated it. And you've asked me for specific answers. I'm not entitled to give you specific answers yet. And I know you're getting tired of hearing this, but we're in this together. You have to help us as we move along. I can't do this. We could have a brains trust of half a dozen people and present you with a plan. You'd be committing harikiri to do that. You can't do that. I'm an academician, and you know the title I value the most is I was a tenured full professor. That's the title I value the most. So being an academic, I understand the importance of inclusion and deliberation, and that's what I'm trying to accomplish. And I promised the board that. I publicly promised that to the board.
We would all appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you.